Gracias por seguir con nosotros en el Summit de la Liga BBVA MX. Este día lo dedicamos a la industria del fútbol. Y si hay algo en este mundo del balón que está creciendo a pasos agigantados, es la rama femenil. Y nos da muchísimo gusto. Por ello conectamos con Julia Headley, presentadora y narradora de ESPN, para que junto a Jessica Berman, comisionada de la NWSL, nos compartan las perspectivas de una de las mejores ligas femeniles del planeta. Vamos a verlo.
Vamos.
Hi, we're here with Jessica Berman for La Liga Summit this year. Jessica Berman is a lawyer and she's also the commissioner of the National Women's Super League. Jessica, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. It's really a pleasure. And we like to start talking about your time in the National Women's Super League. How long have you been in there? And when you got this job, what challenges did you face? And you keep facing, of course.
Yeah, so I've been in the role just exactly 1 year, so 12 months as the commissioner. And the challenges were pretty difficult to manage coming in the door. I don't know whether your stakeholders, how aware they were of our cultural and systemic abuse issues, but when I started, there was an ongoing investigation that was intended to address and do fact-finding that we were conducting jointly with our Players Association. And my primary responsibility coming in was really to rebuild trust and credibility with our players so that we could unlock the future of our business. And that was really the number one challenge that was in front of me when I started on April 20th of 2022.
Sure. And beside that, what was your diagnosis, if we can call it that way, of the league compared to the industries you had worked previously that were the NHL and the lacrosse league?
Yeah, well, I've spent my whole career working in professional sports. The unique challenge for this role was that it was a women's league. And historically, in the 25 years I've worked in professional sports, I've only ever represented men's leagues. And it is quite a different dynamic and a different challenge from a business perspective working on behalf of women. And I was very excited to see both the similarities and the differences that exist here as compared to the other major professional sports leagues where I've worked for most of my career.
And why? Talking about business, why is it so different working with a women's league?
I think the primary difference, well, there's a couple of differences. Number one, from an investor lens, from a sponsor lens, from a media lens, the history of women's sports, I think globally, but certainly I could say in the United States, has been thought of as philanthropy or a charity. And so to the extent any brands or investors or media invested in women's sports, it was thought of as a do-good type of initiative, a favor. And it was thought of as a social responsibility as opposed to a business activity. And when you focus on something as a business, as has been done in men's leagues for more than 100 years in our country, it thrives as a business. And when you focus on something as a social impact initiative, there's only so much investment that is provided, and there is very little professionalism and operational rigor instituted into the way the business operates. And so I think those fundamental challenges led to a lot of the systemic issues that we've seen in women's sports, from a playing environment and culture perspective for the players, but then also from a business perspective. It's not surprising that the conclusion of leagues that have been around for 10, 20, 30 years are less successful than the men's leagues because they haven't been given the resources to survive and thrive. And that was really the fundamental change and the opportunity that was presented to me when I was offered this position, was that the owners of the NWSL, who are the individual team owners, had made a decision that they were going to change the way that they invested in this league and treat it like an independent business investment. And we see the results of what has transpired in the last 12 months from that transformation.
And that happens not just in the States, but in many countries, like seeing a women's league like a favor or like philanthropy and not seeing it as a business. Once you see this and you've been in this role for a year and you got to know your new market, what vision did you set for the league? What was your main priority?
My number one priority was to rebuild trust with the players. I fundamentally believe in all professional sports, but I think even more so in the NWSL, that the players hold the keys to unlocking the future potential of this league, because the players in our league are cultural icons, not just domestically, but globally. People who are not even sports fans know many of the players in our league, and they are activists and they are very vocal on social media, and they have quite a robust following of people who care about them and their ability to be set up for success. And so part of the business strategy was really about empowering our players and building the trust and confidence for the league in them that would allow for them to feel authentic in helping us to build the league. And so a lot of my time in the first 3 to 6 months was spent on a listening tour, sitting down with players and really asking them questions about the areas that have been disappointing from their perspective, the areas of investment that are required in order for them to feel proud to play in the NWSL, and then holding our ownership and the league office accountable to the set of objectives that would be responsive to the issues that were brought to light through conversations with the players.
That was your main priority. So 12 months into this role, what do you consider to be your biggest win in this new era?
Oh, it's a great question. I would say that the players have gone from, I think, being in some cases prepared to walk away from the NWSL and say, we don't believe in this league because we don't believe that you have our back, to where we are today, where the players are helping us to sell tickets and filling the stadiums and promoting tune in broadcast and giving us positive feedback, but also constructive feedback where they're comfortable and they feel safe and supported in being able to say, there's a problem, I need your help. And they know that it's not going to fall on deaf ears. They're going to get the attention of the appropriate professionals at the league to address any issues, concerns, or challenges that they're facing in their local markets. So I think that really is the biggest win. It's a hard one to measure, but everything else that has been achieved, I believe, is the result of that effort. And the other areas that we've seen are year over year. Obviously, our season just launched on March 25th. For our 12 teams home openers, paid attendance was up over 65% year over year from 2022. And I focus on paid attendance because I think that's a much more important metric than just attendance, because again, coming back to our strategy, which is really about valuing ourselves as a league and as a business, we have to instill and train the consumer, which are our fans, to value us by actually charging them for tickets. If we give our tickets away for free, they don't really see our league as having value. The men's leagues don't do that. And we in turn need to actually ask people to pay for something because it is a valuable entertainment experience. And in fact, when we charge for tickets, people are more likely to actually come because they see it as something that is worth their time. And so that's early indication of some of our success.
Shouldn't be shocked. Value your players and you value your league, just thrives and it keeps growing and comes, and it's just a circle.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is still on the to-do list for you?
Well, now that we've sort of rebuilt the foundation of this league, which has also included hiring, tripling the size of our league office. So when I started a year ago, we were at 20 employees, and now we have 60 as of last week. And so we have the resources and the infrastructure in place to be able to support the league being able to thrive, not just survive, but thrive. We're focused on launching 2 new expansion teams for next year. So we sold a team to the Bay Area and Utah as well. And so those 2 teams will join our league for the 2024 season. We sold the team in Utah for a record price of $53 million, which is the most ever that has ever been paid for a women's team independently, independent of the men's team. And so we have to make sure that the launch of those 2 teams are super successful. And we have a lot of resources dedicated to ensuring that they understand and are prepared to be able to enter the league next season. We're actively negotiating our new media deal for next season. So we're in the final year of our multi-year agreement with CBS, and we're in the process of talking to all of the key stakeholders in the media industry to determine where would make the most sense for our league to partner for the airing of our live games in broadcast for the 2024 season. And we're just continuing to ensure that our teams are set up for success. So offering support and services from a consulting perspective from the league to be able to help our teams with all the key areas that drive business, which include ticket sales, sponsorship, licensing, and tune-in. Those are the 4 sort of pillars of our business, and we're working really closely with our teams on all of the levers and mechanisms that can help to drive those areas of our business.
Jessica, we keep listening to you and all these stats and these numbers, and we keep reading about this league and how it keeps growing. You talk about also like the media deal you had with CBS. I think you broke a record of audience with CBS. Yeah. It also happened with Liga MX Femenil the last year, and we know this won't stop, and this keeps growing, and the United States has been one of the most important places to grow the women's sports, not just soccer, but talking about soccer, it's really powerful. What has been the key to this country being like the main place for athletes to grow?
Yeah, I think culturally, there's a massive reckoning happening in our country as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion. And it relates not only to the gender space, but also race, ethnicity, and an acknowledgement that the historical minorities in our country, in the US, are going to be the majority. And so it has forced a conversation, not just in people's living rooms at home and in their personal lives, but also from a business perspective. Because if you recognize and understand that our demographics are shifting in our country, and that the consumers who will hold the power, the buying power on a go forward basis are going to look different than the historical consumer, it's requiring people to think different about business. And that includes an effort from both brands and media partners to really be thoughtful about how they're investing their resources and how they're going to reach new audiences. And the NWSL and women's sports in particular, I think by virtue of the nature of being more purpose-driven, tend to attract a younger and more diverse demographic. And in fact, our athletes are women who embody this idea of, if you see it, you can be it. And really, without saying or doing anything in particular, help to feed this empowerment and activist movement that's happening in our country. And so I think for those reasons, because of the cultural relevance of this area of society, women's sports in particular have benefited from an overcorrection to what has happened historically in terms of where investments have gone.
And talking about investments, we are seeing records. You mentioned the expansion, these two new clubs. You are looking to expand more new stadiums, new clubs, like we mentioned. What is the reason behind this decision? The main reason. I know you talked about it, but to just like keep building and keep growing and keep showing the world.
Yeah, I think the other thing which we haven't talked about yet today is that investors look at sports generally, historically on the men's side, as an asset class. So many of our sports owners have a portfolio of assets where they have investments in the stock market, they have investments in real estate, they have investments in other areas. And sports has been an area that has overperformed, even as compared to the stock market. If you look at the increases in franchise valuation in the NFL and the NBA, where teams are now selling for $5-6 billion, those teams were worth a fraction of that amount 10, 20, 30 years ago. And so if you believe in the fundamental premise that sports assets will increase in value over time, then it follows logically that women's sports are just at the beginning of that growth cycle. We essentially, even though it is the year 2023, we have essentially just started on that growth journey. And so, for example, the private equity fund, Sixth Street, that bought the rights to launch the Bay Area expansion team in 2024, they paid, as I mentioned, $53 million. They believe that that is a tiny investment relative to what it's going to be worth in 3, 5, 7, 10 years. And so it's really just recognizing that as compared to the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball or the NHL, who are 100+ years old, we're just starting. So even if we weren't relevant for all the other reasons that we talked about already, we are on this growth journey that professional sports experiences from an enterprise value perspective that has just begun.
And we are on this growth journey too in Mexico with our league, the Women's Liga MX. 6 years ago it started, and it's also a competition that has been developing, that keeps growing, that keeps breaking records, assistant records, sale records. What do you think is the success model for this result here in Mexico?
I think, continuing to have dedicated resources is really important. And I know, for example, with the leadership of Mariana there, that is something that we have all talked about on an international level. Mariana and I sit on a coalition of representatives who represent their domestic league in this international World Leagues Forum, where we share best practices and talk about the areas in which each of us have strengths and challenges. And I think encouraging and facilitating ownership to dedicate specific resources to the women's team is what will change the growth trajectory of women's sports in other countries. I think we describe it in the NWSL as our superpower, is that despite the fact that it's a harder road to pave when you're doing it independently, but because we are doing it independently, our owners think about investing for the purpose of the NWSL, and it provides a different level of analysis than if it were packaged as part of an investment in the men's team. And so I think those are some of the things that we're starting to see change globally that will really help to elevate how successful women's leagues can be across the globe.
That's why it is so important what you just mentioned, like these alliances between the region, Mexico, the United States, the Women's Liga MX with the NWSL. And we are seeing these alliances that keep forming with clubs like Tigres and Angel City, America, Tijuana with the San Diego Wave. How does this benefit the NWSL? And how does this benefit the market?
It's a great question. And, I hope we'll be doing more of those things on a team level, but also at the league level. It's something that we're actively talking with Mariana and Liga MX Femenil about ways that we can do more together, because it's in our mutual interest to raise the level of this game, women's soccer, in our region, right? Like, we as a region, CONCACAF and CONMEBOL, we're competing with Europe, with UEFA. And we need for our teams to be able to be competitive and strong, particularly if a Club World Cup in the women's game is introduced in the coming years, which we're all sort of waiting to find out whether that happens. But we want Liga MX Femenil to be a strong league. That helps us as well. So we're all working together. The benefit, to answer your question, the benefit to us in partnership is what I said earlier, which is to build the region, to ensure that when we show up as a region in global competitions, that other teams are successful. For example, it helped us in the US that Canada had a competitive team in the recent international competitions. That's something that helps our region. The other reason is what I said earlier about the shifting demographics in the US. And we know that the Spanish-speaking demographic in the US is the fastest growing demographic. And it is an audience that we as a league have not spoken to directly. We have not engaged in the most intentional ways that would actually help us from a business perspective. And so we believe that partnering with Liga MX Femenil could actually help us to unlock fandom of audiences in the US who currently, we know, come from countries that love this sport, but maybe they don't know that the NWSL is here and is a global superpower in the world of women's football. And so that's an area that we're really interested in cultivating from a business perspective.
And you mentioned, Jessica, the World Cup of 2027. These alliances between teams from Liga MX Femenil with the NWSL, do you think they could be strategic for the run from Mexico and the United States to host this World Cup?
I mean, listen, I think I'm excited that we're trying. I'm excited that we're making an effort to continue to bring attention here. And we know that with the Men's World Cup being here in 2026, that the infrastructure will be in place that will make this, I think, super easy for FIFA to say, well, this makes sense. On the other hand, we know that our region has had a lot of international events. And so I think it's going to take some convincing on all of our parts to FIFA that it makes sense to have this here, because I could imagine other areas of the world are wanting some attention from FIFA. But we believe from a business perspective, from a facilities perspective, there's no region that can compete with us collectively in this space. And so I think it would be a tremendous opportunity and success for us to be able to have the Women's World Cup here in 27 collectively.
And this talk has generated great interest from the public, of course, and some are already beginning to send their questions, like the challenge of the Yates report, the report of the future of the NWSL. What did you learn, and how do you see yourselves with this new protocol and this new procedure?
Yeah, we learned a lot. We learned that we need, as a league, to ensure that we have the appropriate programs and policies and procedures that support our players, and that has to be our top priority, that guides every business decision that we make. And so we've instituted for this season, for the 23 season, league-wide training for all of our players to make sure they understand how to report any concerns they have from a emotional, physical, or sexual abuse experience, that there's an infrastructure in place to be responsive to them, and that they can report that anonymously. And we also have reviewed and implemented a host of changes in our policies to be able to support our players. And these are the things that investors, brands, and media partners want to know exist, so that they can make sure that our league is prepared for the future, and that we're going to show up in a meaningfully different and positive way for our players on a go-forward basis. And so these things are inextricably intertwined. In order for our business to thrive, we have to have dedicated resources to ensure that our players are safe and that they feel supported.
You mentioned, and this is really important, that your league is prepared for the future. And we also believe that for Liga MX Femenil. How do you see personally the situation of women's soccer, talking about the region, of course, talking about Mexico, the United States, in the short, in the medium, and in the long term?
I think in the short term, we're going to see massive growth. The fans, consumers, are very thirsty for entertainment. And I genuinely believe that women's soccer is one of the most entertaining sports properties that exist in the world. And I think the Women's World Cup this summer is going to be a huge catalyst for that growth for us. I also think as we continue to expand, we're going to have the opportunity to engage more people and be able to have exposure to new audiences that will help us to drive our business. I think as a region, our challenges will be that in other areas of the world where men's football is a superpower in the business of sports, they are starting to invest in their women's team. And I think that will ultimately be great for the sport. And it will force us in our region to continue to innovate and move this sport forward, and to ensure that we continue to have the infrastructure to be successful on a global basis. So I think this is an industry, this is a sport that's going to change very rapidly in the coming years.
And for this to happen, we need investment. We need that the owners believe in this, believe in women's soccer, and keep doing what they are doing. What would be your message to all these people that are really sitting in these important places and have a say for women's soccer to keep growing?
Yeah, I would say whether you're motivated by business and return on investment, or you're motivated because it's the right thing to do, at the end of the day, this industry of women's soccer is just at the beginning of our growth, and it is the time to get in the door. And there are so many opportunities to invest and support the growth of these businesses, because they have been so underinvested for so many years that we have a lot of catching up to do. And so my message would be to look at this strategically like you would any other investment opportunity, to conclude, and you will conclude, that it is a good investment because we are just at the beginning.
Thank you, Jessica. Just to finish, if you want to add something, just final comments or anything, we value a lot your point of view.
Thank you. Well, I would just say I want to thank you for being here with me today, and thank Liga MX Femenil for all of the support and interest in working with us. Mariana in particular was one of the first people who reached out to me when I got this job 1 year ago. And I have a lot of experience in sports and men's sports, but not a lot of experience in the sport of soccer, and definitely not in women's soccer. And Liga MX Femenil has been so welcoming to me personally and to our league. And I'm very excited about what's to come and working more closely together on how we can elevate this region to ensure that we're a global superpower in our collective region. And I think it's possible with everything that you all bring to the table and we bring to the table.
Thank you for your time, and congratulations for all the work you've been doing in this job. And thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica Berman, NWSL Commissioner for La Liga Summit 2023, and we go back to the studio with you. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Juli, y por supuesto a la comisionada, la verdad, tocando puntos importantísimos, y creo que recientemente fue el claro reflejo, Toño, de lo que sucedió en la final del fútbol femenil aquí en la Liga MX, haciendo récord histórico en cuanto a asistencia, pero también cómo se suman cada vez plataformas más importantes para la difusión y el crecimiento. La inversión es importantísima, de forma específica para el deporte, no solo el fútbol, sino el deporte femenil como tal.
Nos ha tocado, Val, ver en este siglo XXI la explosión del fútbol femenil, la aceptación, la promoción del fútbol para las mujeres, lo cual también amplifica totalmente las posibilidades de este fabuloso juego. Sigan en la conversación, únanse con nosotros usando el hashtag Summit Liga MX y consultando los contenidos en la página oficial. Pero antes de seguir, queremos presentarles a un futuro socio comercial de la Liga BBVA MX. Esto es Futbol.
Hola a todos, soy Robert Lewandowski y estoy feliz de estar aquí hablando para todos ustedes sobre Futbol, la marca que está revolucionando el fútbol mundial, entregándole a los fans el coleccionable más valorado por todos, el balón de gol. Así es, los balones con los que los jugadores de la liga marcamos los goles, Futbol los certifica y los convierte en coleccionables digitales para que los fans los consigan y participen por los balones originales. ¿Cómo hacen esto posible? Escuchen esto.
En Futbol llevamos la pasión por el fútbol a donde nadie más lo ha hecho. Hoy nos sumergimos en el cautivador mundo de Web 1, Web 2 y Web 3, demostrando cómo la Web 3 es perfecta para transformar el fútbol como nunca antes se había visto. Prepárese para un viaje increíble junto a los fanáticos de este deporte. La certificación de los balones con los que se marcan los goles y la gamificación impulsada por Web 3. Todo mientras aprovechamos los desafíos en el espacio NFT. Te contamos una breve descripción de Web 1, Web 2 y Web 3. Todo se remonta a la Web 1 en los años 90, con esas páginas estáticas, con fotos informativas. Los usuarios podían acceder a la información, pero había pocas oportunidades de participación o contribución. En los 2000 llega la Web 2, con las redes sociales, los blogs y plataformas. Esta era marcó el comienzo de una experiencia de usuario dinámica e interactiva que permitió la comunicación, el intercambio y la colaboración. Ahora estamos entrando en la era de Web 3, la web descentralizada, donde se desarrolla el verdadero potencial de Internet. Web 3 se caracteriza por tecnologías descentralizadas de código abierto como blockchain y contratos inteligentes que otorgan a los usuarios más control y propiedad de su presencia en línea. Las aplicaciones descentralizadas, dApps y las criptomonedas son solo un vistazo de las posibilidades de Web 3. En Futbol estamos entusiasmados con la forma en que la tecnología Web 3 puede ofrecer a los fanáticos del fútbol como ustedes una experiencia interactiva sin precedentes con sus equipos y jugadores favoritos. A través de tokenización y plataformas descentralizadas, los fanáticos ahora pueden ser dueños de los balones de gol, adquiriendo activos digitales como tokens coleccionables o mercancía virtual. Nuestra misión es conectar el mundo real con el digital, creando una experiencia digital perfecta. Ahora te contamos cómo se inició la idea de la recolección del balón físico. En más de 100 años de fútbol profesional, ninguna liga o torneo en el mundo ha identificado y certificado el balón goleador. El fútbol es el único deporte de equipo en el que el reloj nunca se detiene. Hay varios balones colocados alrededor del campo en todo momento, listos para entrar en acción, para garantizar que el juego esté en constante movimiento. En su precipitación, algunos jugadores que marcan un gol corren con el balón al centro del campo para reanudar el juego lo antes posible. El balón vuelve a estar en juego y al mismo tiempo se ha perdido un balón único de gol. Hasta ahora. En Futbol estamos orgullosos de ser los dueños de todos los balones con los que se juega en la liga. Y nuestra misión es crear memorabilia, souvenirs que no tienen precio y entregárselos a los fans para generar una revolución. Antes del comienzo de cada partido, todos los balones que se van a utilizar son marcados con los logotipos de los equipos y un código QR único. Y mediante la tecnología contra falsificación de balones, creamos un proceso de triple verificación. Una vez se marca un gol, estos balones únicos se colocan en los tótems Futbol y se exponen en el estadio para que todos los vean. Después del partido se digitalizan y se suben a nuestra plataforma Web 3. Y hoy, gracias a blockchain, los aficionados pueden adquirirlos en una versión digital única, que les permite participar en la elección del nuevo dueño del balón original. Un mes después de haberse marcado el gol, se realiza la elección de quién se llevará el balón original entre todos los que adquirieron el coleccionable digital. Para elegir quién se lo lleva, se utiliza el sistema más transparente de elección aleatoria, Chain Link. Una vez elegido, Goalball entregará el balón en cualquier parte del mundo, directamente en la puerta del aficionado. Y eso no es todo. En Goalball estamos acercando a los fans del fútbol con el mundo Web 3. Cuando un fan compra un coleccionable de un balón de gol, puede ver el certificado digital, descargar stickers únicos, hacerse selfies con sus jugadores favoritos, jugar con el balón en realidad aumentada, subir el coleccionable en el Apple Wallet. Y esto es solo el principio. Con Goalball, los fans pueden coleccionar los momentos más felices para un equipo y todos sus aficionados, los goles. Así es, puedes completar las colecciones de los goles de tu equipo y podrás ganar balones originales con los que han jugado su equipo, camisetas oficiales o experiencias inolvidables como ser certificador Goalball en el campo de juego. Puedes vivir el partido como solo lo ve un entrenador, los jugadores del banquillo o en este caso, nuestros certificadores Goalball. ¿Y cómo se pueden completar las colecciones? Comprando en el market los coleccionables digitales disponibles de tu equipo desde €1. También se pueden asegurar precomprándolos antes de que comience el partido y una vez se marquen los goles se cargarán en la sección Mis Goal Balls. Además, podrás intercambiar y vender los coleccionables que necesitas con otros fans, como cuando llenabas el álbum de cromos. Web3 está preparado para iniciar una revolución en el mundo del fútbol y Goalball está al mando de esta transformación. Con una participación innovadora de los fanáticos, una sólida certificación de balones de gol y una gamificación de última generación, el futuro del fútbol nunca ha sido más prometedor. Así que prepárate para ser parte de la era más emocionante en la historia del fútbol. Modric, Lewandowski, Courtois, Marcos Llorente y Silva ya están dentro.
El fútbol es de los fans. Produce emociones que no se pueden comparar. Pero hay cosas que queremos mejorar.
Es tiempo de cambiar la relación entre los fans, su equipo y los goleadores.
Si cada jugada y cada gol tiene una historia, ahora puedes ser parte de ella.
Gracias a Goalball, todos nuestros goles ahora pueden ser tuyos.
Chicos, gran iniciativa.
Y hoy te traemos una gran noticia. Goalball y la Liga BBVA MX se han asociado para que muy pronto puedas coleccionar cada uno de los balones de gol. Imagínate teniendo en tus manos los balones de gol de tus ídolos, donde podrás obtener beneficios en el mundo real y digital. Adicionalmente podrás ganar muchos premios. Regístrate ya a goalball.com y únete a la revolución del fútbol mundial.
Me encanta, ¿eh? Yo ya me emocioné. O sea, esto es hacia el futuro, pero me encantaría.
¿Hacia el futuro?
Bueno,
Este
inmediato.
es el futuro.
Este es el futuro. Ya lo viste. Imagínate tener el balón.
Ya me voy.
Imagínate la
Esto me
gente del
preocupa.
Atlas
Ajá,
que tuviera el
claro.
balón con el que se marca el gol definitivo para romper la maldición.
Correcto.
Imagínate tener uno de los grandes goles de Cuauhtémoc Blanco, el balón. Y así me puedo seguir, ¿no? La gente de Tigres, de Monterrey, de Chivas. La verdad es que sí es muy significativo tenerlo en casa.
Me encantó lo que decía Lewandowski de que cada gol tiene su historia.
Sí.
Y sí, hay muchísima gente que daría todo por estas historias, por tenerlas, ¿no? Y ser parte de eso. Bueno, muchísimas gracias por seguir con nosotros. Y hay que decir que la gestión deportiva pues depende de muchísimas cosas. El país, la cultura, la capacidad de adaptación del jugador o el directivo, entre muchas más. Para conocer más, les dejamos las cámaras y micrófonos a Damián. Qué raro. El ruso Samogilny, para que charle con Carlos Aviña y saber las